Welcome to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast, brought to you by www.legaladviceinparadise.com. Even in one of the most beautiful places in the world, life can be litigious. On this podcast, the best and brightest legal minds gather to help you navigate your way through every legal question you may face. This program will help you know your rights, know what steps to take, and help you find the best legal representation, all in simple, easy to understand terms. And now, here's your host, Justine Gronwald.
Aloha, Agents of Change. This is Justine Gronwald with Legal Advice in Paradise, and it's my honor and privilege to have a special guest, Richard Turbin, for the second time. And this time we're going to hit a topic that resonates with people who have experienced this, and it's, for me, it would be an emotional thing because it's being, the topic is going to cover wrongful death. And before we go along, I just wanted to tell you that if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode. And if you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Spreaker, or SoundCloud, we're everywhere now, please subscribe. And any comments that you have for the show, just write to me at Justine at Legal Advice in Paradise. And I'm loving all the comments and the requests that I'm getting, so just keep it coming. So with that said, and we want to recognize our official sponsor, Green Energy. They've been the official energy drink for me now for the last month or so. And we're so nice to have that product on the show. So let's get right into wrongful death. So Richard, when I called you and said, hey, you want to be on the show again, what are some topics we can cover? We kind of did a broad thing on personal injury. In my mind, this is like the ultimate, because I imagine when people come to you, someone has to have died and the reason behind it. And so what you're dealing with, I imagine, is people coming to you, they're very emotional, they just lost a close friend, a loved one, and tell us a little bit about how that happens, and now the people coming to you are the living, right? Because and they're representing the people who unfortunately passed away. So I don't even know where to start, so I'm just going to give it to you because it's a heavy topic to me.
Right, yeah. And first, Justine, I want to thank you again for inviting me to be on your show. It's
you're welcome.
Honor to be on your show. You're doing such a great job.
Thank you.
Giving the listeners and the viewers such important information. So I think you're really performing a very good public service.
Well, thank you very much.
So on behalf of everybody, I thank you. And it's certainly an honor to be on your show. But let's talk about, the wrongful death area of law. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's the ultimate injury. I mean, obviously, death is the ultimate injury. And when you talk about wrongful death, we're talking about somebody who should not have died. I mean, somebody who did not die of natural causes, but died because of the negligence of another human being. It's the fault of another human being. And it goes beyond criminal fault. I mean, most lawyers, personal injury lawyers, when they take a wrongful death case, it's not a case of homicide.
I was going to ask you what differentiates that, because you said it's because of someone, but it's not on a criminal level? Right.
Although sometimes it can be both. But we know that, there's basically two types of law. There's criminal law and civil law. Criminal law is when somebody has committed a crime. And murder is called homicide. That's the specialized word that you use in law for a murder. It's homicide, and that's criminal law. And in criminal law, the person who is prosecuted is prosecuted by a prosecutor, usually a city prosecutor. We vote for the Office
Right.
of Prosecuting Attorney every 4 years. Right now, it's Keith Kaneshiro. Before that, it was Peter Carlisle.
And I had him on the show.
Yeah, and they're in charge of the prosecuting of people who commit crimes. So it's the state of Hawaii. Also, the attorney generals can prosecute for crimes also, but generally it's a city prosecutor, and the case is called the State of Hawaii versus John Doe. Okay, that's usually who's being prosecuted. Okay, right now there's the famous Didi case going on. Right,
There's a lot
that.
of commentary on that.
Yeah. So that's criminal cases. Now, there's also the civil aspect to it, and the civil case is when somebody is suing another party, and it's usually for compensation, for money, because in our system of justice, that's how people get compensated. They get compensated with money. There's really no other way to compensate somebody. So a civil wrongful death case is, let's say, John Doe versus Jane Smith. Okay, so the victim is going to be suing the perpetrator, the person who caused the injury, caused the harm. Let's say we know about automobile accident cases. Let's say you have, John Doe suing Jane Smith because John Doe was driving a car and was rear-ended by Jane Smith and hurt their back. Okay, that's that's a typical personal injury case, and we talked about that last
Right.
time. Okay, but now let's make the case worse. Okay, and it's sad to say.
that has to be
But let's say John Doe is in a car, driving a car, and Jane Smith hits that car so hard, so violently, that John Doe unfortunately dies from the automobile accident. Okay, so now it's a personal injury case, yes, but it's also a wrongful death case. And obviously, John Doe can no longer bring the case for himself because he's no longer with us. So in that case, somebody will be his heir. His survivor. In most cases, if it's a spouse, let's say it's going to be his wife who will be his heir and will bring the case on behalf of John Doe. And the case now will be the estate of John Doe versus Jane Smith.
I
Okay?
see.
The estate of John Doe, and it'll be the special administrator of the estate will be the spouse, will be his wife. If he's not married, it will be either his children or his parents.
Now, is this automatic? Because I did do an interview with Scott McCoakany about doing living wills and trusts and stuff like that. Does it tie in together? Like when somebody dies and then, this is the beneficiary or something, would that automatically be the person putting in the claim? No,
well,
it's kind of
it doesn't have to be. It probably will be. It probably will be the person who puts in the claim, but it doesn't have to be. If that person isn't available. The other problem too is like often the probate will occur. Probates don't close until 2 years.
It's lengthy.
Yeah, it's a lengthy process, and it's a 2-year statute of limitations. You have to bring the lawsuit. So probably a special administrator will be appointed before the case is probated. But you'll have to go. Generally, you go to circuit court to have the special administrator appointed. But the thing that's different about a wrongful death case is, wrongful death case is controlled by statute, by an actual law passed by the legislature. Okay, most personal injury cases is governed by what we call common law or court-made law. It's judges the Supreme Court of this, a judge in a case will make a decision about, how a personal injury case is done, and then, eventually somebody might disagree with how the judge wants to do it, and will appeal the judge's decision to the Hawaii Supreme Court, and the Hawaii Supreme Court will make the final decision on how a personal injury case should be run, and that's called the common law. Okay, it's an old, historical term from, British law, which, American law derived from, and actually British law really derived from French law.
I always love your history lessons, the
it's
last time.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's a good system, but it's been developed over really thousands of years. William the Conqueror brought the law from France to England, and then it developed in England, and then the law came to the United States. So that's common law. But with wrongful death, it gets so important. I mean, losing people dying is such an important issue in the state that the state has passed a wrongful death statute.
Wow.
Yes. So
what's the statute of limitations on that?
It's strictly 2 years on a wrongful death case, strictly 2 years. Now, remember, for a normal personal injury case, Hawaii automobile accidents, it's generally 2 years from the date of the last no-fault payment. Somebody gets into an auto accident, you have to carry no-fault insurance, and that no-fault insurance, you have to file an application for the no-fault insurance. Once you get the no-fault insurance, your insurance company will pay your medical providers, your doctors, your physical therapists, money to pay for the treatment. And under Hawaii law, you have 2 years from the date of the last no-fault payment to file a lawsuit. So let's say the last no-fault payment is made 2 years after the date of the accident, then a person really has 4 years to file a lawsuit. Don't file within 2 years of the date of the last no-fault payment, then you lose your right to make a claim. But with wrongful death, it's strictly 2 years.
From the day that the person
From the day
passed.
of the person died. Yeah, so that's a very important difference.
Now, let me ask you this. Say it was due to a car accident, maybe excessive speeding or whatever it may be. How soon do you see the living heirs come to you? It's like right away, or do they go through the grieving process? Do they bury their loved one? I don't know. Because these are real things.
Well, often, it's after the funeral. I mean, a lot of people, when they go through something like that, I mean, they're so emotionally devastated, that it's very difficult for them to function when a loved one dies, a spouse or a father or a mother. So
my dad died. This is August now, going on 8 months, and it feels like just yesterday.
I know. I remember when I had to go through that with my mother. It took a good 6 months. I mean, a good 6 months to really get over the major grieving, major grief. So it takes a long period of time. My advice, of course, is to hire the lawyer as soon as possible, because evidence has to be preserved. Evidence has to be preserved. I mean, I know I recently got retained, and fortunately it's an older man. He was a pedestrian struck by a car and hurt very badly. Fortunately, did not die, and was severely injured, and he's just really come out of the coma. It's 3 weeks later. It's just really come out of the coma, so it looks like he's going to make a pretty good recovery, but it's going to be a long time, but it's going to be a pretty good recovery. But the family, family flew out from children lived all over the world, Thailand, the mainland, and you had 6 children that flew over. Some were local. And they were, in the grieving state. I mean, they were, and mostly worry, because of their, their father was so severely injured in the hospital.
In coma. Wow.
But and I didn't want to. They contacted me, and I met them several times, and they didn't want to hire me right away. And of course, they were interviewing other lawyers also. But I didn't want to push them. But I told them they needed to make a decision because there was evidence that needed to be preserved. I mean, specifically, there was blood stains in the crosswalk, near the crosswalk where the victim was hit. And I said, you really need a lawyer to take the photographs,
Oh, let me ask you this. So, typically, when the police are on there, do they do their little what they call?
Yeah,
they take evidence and
stuff.
Yeah. But you, as an attorney, want to go and do your
do
own
it
as
myself.
well?
Yeah, do
Okay.
it myself, because often the police do an excellent job, but sometimes the police they don't do that good a job. And they're not going to think about doing certain things. Finding the witness. In this case, there was a witness, but the witness worked for the military in a military hotel, and he was going to be leaving. So fortunately, they did retain me before he left, and I was able to go and get a statement and a affidavit from the individual. But it's important to preserve the evidence. So from a practical standpoint, it's better to hire the lawyer sooner rather than later. But it's such a tough situation, and
I imagine.
Your heart just goes out to these grieving people.
And then also, like a personal injury, is insurance involved with the person that they're going to file against?
Yes. I mean, of course, because again, lawyers do it on a contingency fee basis. Generally taking about a third of the recovery as a legal fee, and what you're looking for is insurance. Which insurance company is going to cover this terrible tragic accident? And of course, if it's an automobile accident, you're looking first at the
auto insurance.
the auto insurance. But then you're going to be looking at underinsured motorist protection. Hopefully, the victim has his or her own insurance policy and bought uninsured motorist protection and underinsured motorist protection, and enough to cover the injuries. Now, of course, the death is the ultimate injury. So those cases, the victim should receive a large amount of compensation. So let's talk about that.
Okay. That's the next question that's coming to my mind. Okay. There's several things I can see that come into play. First of all, you have to figure out the dollar amount because this person is no longer with us, right?
Right.
Second, is it that when they figure out the claim, and if and when they win, is that when the will and stuff come into play? Is that fit together now?
It does.
Who gets it?
Yeah, I mean, it does and it doesn't, okay?
Oh.
So let's kind of talk about that for a minute, okay? So there's different types of compensation. There's different type of recoveries in the wrongful death scenario. And the first is, the loss of the estate, okay? The loss of the estate. Because this individual will have, most likely earned more money the longer the person lived, either through work, accumulating assets,
right.
Such as property, bank accounts, and insurance proceeds, let's say, Social Security benefits, retirement benefits. All
of that comes into play.
All of that comes into play, and then what the estate is entitled to be compensated for is the value of the state if the person lived to normal lifespan, which is now, well, depending on the age, but close to 80 for women, and 78 for men, and for an older person, now we're into about 87, 88. So what the lawyer does is have to hire an economist, a forensic economist, or a litigation economist. an economist who is familiar working in the legal system and will calculate the loss of the estate, which is basically accumulated assets minus expenses.
What normally would have been expenses.
Yeah, what the
Overall.
person normally would have spent, to either support himself or support himself and his spouse, or support himself, his spouse, and his children up to the age of majority, 18, that sort of thing, So you might have a person who's, well paid, let's say making, $50,000, $60,000 a year, and if you calculate that over the course, let's say the person is 25, and if you're young, I have one case where the individual tragically was killed at the age of 24 and a half.
Wow.
Making
So
about,
you're talking like 60-something years.
I know. Well, the Economist calculated the value of the estate about $800,000. In other words, assuming that at that earning level, the earning level the individual was headed for, not a college graduate, but in the military.
So that's all taken into account. Then.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that the value of the estate, in other words, accumulated assets minus expenses, would come to about $800,000. So that's the loss of the estate. Now, the individual, the person, the decedent, that's the word for the person who was killed, the person who was killed also is entitled to recover pain and suffering. What the individual's pain and suffering was before he died. Now, if he died immediately on the spot, you're not going to have too much pain and suffering because the person died right away. But if it was a lingering type of
Staying in the hospital.
staying in the hospital in a lot of pain,
And just didn't make it.
and just didn't make it, now you're talking a lot of pain and suffering. And then you're also talking about what's called hedonic damages. Hedonic damages, that means the loss of just not being able to live, the loss of, those wonderful things that we all cherish while we're living,
Wow, I never heard of that term before.
Hedonic damages, Hedonic.
Wow.
Yeah, not being able to go to children's weddings or college graduates, college graduation, not being able to, spend time with your spouse, not being able to enjoy your recreation, whatever it is, running, bicycling, surfing, just laying down at the beach.
All of that is taken into consideration.
Yeah,
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's called hedonic damages. Really, loss of enjoyment of life is what that means. Then, of course, the loved ones, providing that the loved one, the survivors, the spouse, the children, providing that they receive some sort of support, from the person who died, the loved one who died, even if it's just emotional support, not necessarily monetary support, but monetary support and or emotional support, then those survivors are entitled to recover also. So when you put it all together, it's a lot of compensation that people are entitled to.
Yeah, that's a lot of that. Economist has to go through a long laundry list.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, technically, the Economist is not permitted to calculate hedonic damages or loss of love and support. There's Hawaii law that says no, you don't use an economist to calculate, the emotional side of a recovery. Only the financial loss.
Oh, I see.
The loss of the monetary estate.
I got to separate the two because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
And there's the legislation, the law also gives the economist guidance on how he or she is supposed to calculate the amount of money recovered. You used after-tax dollars, not before-tax dollars. And of course, you got to calculate into the future.
Yeah, so they take the gross, not the net, right?
They take the net, not the gross.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's complicated. Yeah.
So typically when you sit with a client, when they come to you, this is the question I ask all attorneys. This is more touchy, though. Of course, you need to investigate, so you want them to come to you as soon as possible, of course, with anything in their recollection or all of those things that they can remember. Right.
Yeah. They have to, of course, somebody who has gone through, a terrible thing like the loss of a loved one, you don't want to burden them with too much responsibility. So usually I'll assume that I'm going to be collecting, the relevant data, going out, doing the investigation, maybe hiring an engineer to do what's called accident reconstruction, reconstruct what happened at the time of the accident. But I will tell the loved ones, don't throw anything away. Don't throw away the clothes of the decedent, the personal memorabilia. If he loves football, his footballs or his football helmets, because all of that personal belongings that tell the story about the victim's life. We will need that for trial or arbitration. We want to show that to the judge or the jury or the arbitrator.
What he's missing out on. Like if he loved football and played football, look, he can no longer
do that.
Enjoy what he used to do.
Right.
Okay.
You keep the photographs.
That never even entered my mind. That would be taken into consideration.
Right. So that's I always tell my clients, hold on to the memories. Because memories fade, but a picture tells 1,000 stories. I mean, what about awards, personal personal commendations, prizes, hold on to all of that. Very, very important.
Okay.
Yeah, hold on to the evidence. The evidence of the person's life is very, very important.
Right. And what do you recommend? I think we covered mostly everything, but is there anything that comes to mind that you want to tell people? Of course, nobody knows if they're going to end up in this situation. We hope, it doesn't happen, but if it happens, or of someone, first you would recommend them to call you right away.
Sure.
And anything else, like a list of what you would recommend?
Yeah, and I'll say that, we'll put out my phone number, 528-4000, and also the name of the law firm, Turbin, Chu, Height.
I'm going to have all that information
good,
in
and
there.
check our website. And my email is richturbin, RICHTURBIN @turbin.net. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, just so that the listeners know, they really do need a lawyer. It's very, very complicated, and I want to just mention that if a person tragically dies because of medical malpractice, because of a mistake, a wrongful mistake made by a doctor or medical personnel, in Hawaii, you have to file a form called the MICP, the Medical Inquiry Conciliation Panel form, and you have to do that within 2 years. And that's with the
Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs.
The Insurance Commissioner's Office.
And you know what? I know lots of people, or no one knows about this.
Right.
There's a listener out there that I may have mentioned to you. I'm not really sure, but he had a case, and it sounds like the attorney that he talked to didn't even mention MICP. The statute of limitations passed.
Oof.
So there's
That's
nothing
terrible.
really you can do, or I don't know. Is there such a thing that if it goes beyond?
Well, if a lawyer, if you hire a lawyer and the lawyer misses the statute of limitations, the time period passes, that's certainly legal malpractice.
Well, I'm not really sure if he really retained them, but all I know is that they should have at least told him about the MICP.
Right.
What happened, I think, was the office got kind of busy. They told him, oh, maybe wait. I'm just assuming. And by the time anything could be done, he found out there's a 2-year.
Yeah, it's terrible. I know a lawyer had a very serious case and called me up, said, oh, can you just, check over this complaint I did? And I said, sure, sent over the complaint, and it was a medical malpractice case, and the lawyer didn't know anything about the MICP.
Yeah.
And then, fortunately, it was about 4 days before the statute of limitations.
Whoa.
So I just did it for him. I just did it for him and filed the MICP because I didn't want the client to have his case ruined because the lawyer missed the statute of limitations.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, this is for people to know out there that if you call the attorney, they don't mention MICP, they're not the ones for you.
Right. You got to get somebody who knows what they're doing. It's just like, again, it's like going to a doctor. It's, a woman needs to see a OBGYN and instead goes to a dermatologist. Well, I mean,
that ain't going to work.
It's not going to work. It's just like, if you have a terrible tragedy like this happening in your family, you need to hire a lawyer. You need
to investigate the lawyer who can investigate properly.
Yeah. Who knows the field of law.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much, Richard,
Justine,
for
pleasure.
coming for another time. And
it's always fun, and it's these are rough, tough topics.
They are.
But it's important that, people, especially when something that terrible happens, people need the right counseling and the right advice, and they needs to retain a lawyer who can protect them and do the job correctly in the best way.
Well, I'm glad because somebody wrote to me privately if I know of an attorney for wrongful death. So I called you up.
Yeah, great.
And that's why you're here again.
Okay, good. Happy to be here.
Okay, so in the video we always shaka out, and then in the audio we say aloha and a hui ho.
Aloha and a hui ho.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast. For more information, visit www.legaladviceinparadise.com.